when
We're recording.
You're recording? Nice. So we do a little sound syncing thing. That's kind of what I was talking about, but we'll say our name and clap, and that makes it easier to sync all the audio. So Aaron.
Seth.
Hannah.
Just one. We have a whole theory after 240 episodes of how many claps the guest gives is completely tied to their personality type.
Okay, what's my personality type?
I don't know. I was just making that up completely, but
Isn't he believable?
It would have been awesome.
yeah.
I thought you were
Yeah,
going to
I'm not
say
sure.
it's 1 out of 10. If you clap like once, your performance is a 1 out of 10. People who go,
That's gonna be
the
great.
best.
Yeah. But yes, by one clap, you're probably an INFJ. That's what I would go with.
Jesus.
I don't even know what that is.
Personality type.
Yeah.
That's what
You know
Aaron
when
is. That's
does.
why he said it.
That's the only
Oh,
one I
okay.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, self-centered guy. It's the
And
only
it
thing he
seems
knows is
like-
himself.
It seems like it's the most rare personality type, but anyone you ask, that's what they are. So it's a weird thing. It's a weird phenomenon. Anyways, welcome to the show, Hannah. Thank you for
Welcome.
being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to chat.
Good. Let's
First
start
guest
with
in a while, huh?
Yeah, we went on
Refreshing.
a streak and a stretch. All
I
in
thought you were
one,
going
a
to say we
streak.
went on strike, guest strike.
No. Yeah, it was just you and I for a little bit. We just had a bunch of topics that we wanted to keep hitting. So
Yeah,
That's
thank
fine.
God it's not just you and I now. I was
No.
growing a bit tired of you.
yeah, it makes YouTube editing much easier. So I enjoy it. But Hannah's ruined the streak in a good way. Welcome to the show. Tell us and the audience a little bit about yourself, your photography journey. Let's start simple, and then we'll start peppering you with the tough stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, thanks for having me on. The photography journey, wow. I think like every photographer that I think I've ever spoken to, it starts at a young age, some sort of creative outlet. For me, it was a black and white photography class. And I took that class, loved it, took all these super artsy photos of my friends, as you do in high school, and then kind of lost it when I got to college and beyond, really. And then I was working in public relations. That's what my degree is in communications, and ended up pursuing a career very shortly in that, and realized this is really passionless in a way. And I just was a person that always wanted something more to kind of like satiate that creative need I think that I had always had. And so I started Instagram. It kind of came out when I was in college, and I started an Instagram account, just posting like whatever photos type of thing. Wasn't taking it too seriously. And then ended up getting my hands on the Nikon D3300.
Nice.
And yeah, it was a great camera at the time. I loved it. And that's when I started to take it a little bit more seriously. And so then I ended up entering an Instagram contest. I had never been outside the country before, outside of the US. It's where I'm based. And I really wanted to travel. And this girl that I had followed was offering, if you enter her contest, and you win, you'd be able to travel with her to Asia. And I was like, what the hell? Why not? Like, this sounds amazing. And like, what a crapshoot it would be probably to actually win this. But I tried anyways. I ended up winning that contest and traveled to Hong Kong and Thailand as my first trip out of the country. And my mind was absolutely blown. I think like it just totally changed my entire trajectory of what I was doing, what I wanted, who I was as a person. Like to my core, I changed on that trip and came back, and my entire world just kind of turned upside down. And I tried chasing that photography, I think lifestyle or whatever it was that I had this idea about it. I chased that, and I ended up quitting my job in public relations with very little money saved up. Probably should have kept working. But I knew that if I didn't make a go for it then when else was I going to do it? And so I worked full time in this space since my gosh, I think it was 2017. I quit my job, and that was like 6 months after that trip. Quit my job and booked a one-way ticket to Australia and spent a little bit of time in Australia and then just kept traveling after that. And it's really evolved into such a different thing than it was when it first started, which is crazy to look back at because I often think about like past versions of myself and how different I was, but like how proud of that version I am because it got me to where I am, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the moment in Asia? I mean, that's a huge first trip. That's a absolutely like mind blowing first trip in terms of effort, in terms of time on a plane, in terms of culture shock, all those things. What was the moment that made you, I feel like, go like, this is what I want to do? Can you slim it down to a moment or a feeling or just a spot where you were like,
Mhm.
I need to do this?
Yeah, it was kind of a series of events. I wouldn't say it's just a singular event in that trip. I boarded the flight. I had never been on a massive plane before. And I remember texting the girl I was traveling with and the engines turned on. And I had no idea what to expect because they were so loud. And so I messaged her and I was like, "Hey, are these supposed to be this loud?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, totally normal." And which I giggle about now, honestly, because the amount of big planes I've since been on, it's quite humbling to think back about that. But
Mhm.
um, then it would be another time would be when I deplaned, went through customs for the first time. Like, what is customs? Like, what is this situation? I'm entering a new country and they're asking for my passports. And then you're seeing signs that are in a different language. And then the third thing would be we packed our bags into a very tiny taxi to make our way to our hotel. Our bags didn't fit. We had to put one in the driver's seat and on the roof. And it was just this like, whoa, what this is so different. And then you just see the skyline of Hong Kong, because that was the first stop on the trip. You see the skyline and matched with the mountains behind it. And you're like, whoa, I get goosebumps thinking about it now because
Mhm.
it was that kind of like whole process of just getting there that I was like, oh my goodness, like this is what it's about. This feeling of like otherness and just how big the world is. You don't really experience that when you just stay in your small bubble.
Mhm. So this is 2017, right? Am I remembering
Yeah.
that? Where you decided you're gonna leave your job, your secure sort of safety net job, does
Mhm.
not have passion, and you're gonna jump into this. But what is the jumping into this at that point in back in 2017? Is it brand deals? Is it doing marketing work? Is it modeling, influencer? Like, what is the idea behind I'm going to quit my job and take photos for what? Like, do what?
Yeah. So I think the driving point behind it was brand deals, and I was working in freelance marketing at the time as well. So I had one client where I would manage their social media, and that was enough, honestly, to get me by and to pay all the things I needed to pay at however old I was then. I don't even remember
Mhm.
now. And it just ended up working out. It was like so serendipitous to be able to have this freelance client that would afford me to travel and experience life in such a different way. And the goal at that point was brand deals. To be quite honest, I don't think I ever set out with any sort of intention of, this is what I want out of this. I've always been someone that's like, I'm going to go after something if I feel like it's calling me, then I'm going to go in that direction and I'm going to chase that and follow that until it no longer serves me or it morphs into something else. And that's what happened with this is it just totally morphed into something completely different and could not have ever in my wildest dreams imagined the way that it's kind of evolved over the years. And like, of course, I'm still doing brand deals and stuff, but being hired for commercial work and things like that is just like a pinch me moment. I think like I come from a very small town in the state of Maine, and I don't know, it just is like it feels almost out of body sometimes to think about the way life has happened.
How do you know when something is no longer serving you? I
Mm.
found that an interesting criteria for you switching lanes or going in a different direction.
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been if I wake up in the morning and I am no longer feeling great about what I'm doing, or I'm not excited about something I'm going to be doing that day. It doesn't have to be the entire day. Like, of course, there's stuff in this job that I have now that I don't like doing, like the managerial things, like the emails, certain things I don't like, but the overall gig that I have, like I get up and I'm excited for it. And I can't think for a single second that I was excited to wake up and go work in PR. I remember just feeling, I don't even know what the word is, just like not miserable by any means, but just unhappy and settled in a way. And I like to feel like unsettled, and I like to be on my toes, and I like to be doing something new. And I think that was kind of that, aha, okay, this isn't serving me anymore. I'm not the happiest version of myself showing up for this job. And so being able to have this creative outlet of photography, I noticed this correlation of, okay, this makes me extremely happy. Like taking photos, telling stories, this whole thing is what makes me happy, not telling stories of brands or clients that I don't necessarily have a passion for. And so I think it's that. I think it just, for me, I wasn't the happiest version of myself. And therefore, I kind of just thread the needle in a way of, okay, so this is no longer serving me. So what's going to? And headfirst, I went.
Right.
With that, I think it's clear, and why I originally reached out to you, and Seth followed you, I think, before me, because I think I found your site or your Instagram through somehow, however Instagram
Mhm.
works, and saw that he was following you, and that's usually a key to me because Seth is a little bit more. What's the word? I think he audits profiles a bit more maybe than I do, and he likes to see some sort of value from his follows,
You
which
make
I
me
respect.
sound pretentious.
No, I don't think
Intentional,
so.
I think. That's very intentional.
Intentional. Yeah. I
Fair.
didn't,
That is true. I will give you
I meant,
that.
I meant it as a compliment. So, that's usually a key factor to me. Like if I see that, I'm like, oh, what's this about? And the reason I initially reached out at the time, I don't remember what it was because it's been it's been a while, but the story that you were telling, whether it was for Orvis or LL Bean or something a month ago, I think I wrote out and I was like, I love how you lay out like the visuals, like of like the story, the narrative of all this is going on. Like it's very clear you're passionate about the stuff that you're doing. So with that said, uh, there's moments that you've described in waking up and things aren't serving you, or your original job in PR was not serving you. There is a part, I think, of this whole gig that you're tied to social media. You might be tied to narratives. You might be tied to marketing that you have to do. How do you wake up if there's something that's like, maybe it's 50%, maybe it's 50% where you're like, I need to do this for XYZ, but I'm maybe not the most passionate about it. Where do you fill the rest of that cup to give the best product, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it does make sense. And thank you. I feel like one of the things, first of all, is I am grateful that the passion that I have for this comes through in my content. I think I hold myself to a very high standard. I think as we all do, just as creatives, especially when we're talking visuals, like photo and video. So nothing makes me happier than that, to know that like that passion, that connection that I have inside is somehow translated through these visuals. And I think like the other 50% of, okay, I might not like doing this one thing, or it could be something I'm not super jazzed about to shoot or something like that. I think for me, it's always just, it's dialing it back and making sure I'm intentional with doing something else that's going to fill my cup and keep me going, whether that's something within the photography space or it's something other hobby that I like to do or that I have. And so it's a balance. And it's one thing I lacked for so long because it's such a hustle. And I think like having balance has really helped with that like 50-50 of like okay, making sure I'm checking the boxes for my own like mental well-being, my own mental well-being, and also just my physical well-being. And then got to check the boxes for work, of course, as well. So it's like, it's a fine kind of line that you walk. But I think when we can step back and make sure we're checking in with ourselves as humans, not just like as the machine that creates these things, then that's kind of how I do it, is just, yeah, through that.
Can you unpack some of those boxes, those mental health boxes, those physical boxes, in terms of like what's that mean? Because I do think there is a tie for those people that think, it's all roses
Mm.
and vacations, jumping into social media or marketing or influencing, whatever you want to call it, full time. There then becomes a tie to Instagram and social media. In the last couple of episodes, we've been really diving into where's that healthy balance, and
Mhm.
is it the new smoking, is it the new sitting at your desk? Will we look back in 20, 30 years and be like, oh, I can't believe anyone did that? What are those boxes in terms of that mental health balance and physical balance? Like, what are the specifics there for our audience so that they can hear kind of like what you're paying attention to and not letting go of or forgetting?
Yeah. I think again, like just going back to I think about myself at the very beginning of all of this, and it's like the amount of sleep I didn't get and the amount of health boxes I didn't check, as little as like going on daily walks or eating healthy. Like those things didn't exist at the beginning for me. And I think I got a little older and matured a little bit and kind of just stepped into this role a little bit more fully and was like, okay, if all of this health that I have goes away and all of this like mental capacity I have to manage many things at once goes away, how am I going to do this job? I think it was just this moment of I felt extremely unhealthy. I felt kind of like checked out. And just because of the hustle that Instagram brings to this community, I think like it can be a little overbearing. And so I had that kind of moment. And just since then, I think I've prioritized that a lot more. And I think for me, the goal has always been with Instagram to like post and ghost. Like, I don't want that to be my everything forever. I envision myself very far away from the Instagram hustle. And to be quite honest, it's exhausting still to this day to show up on an app constantly every day. I've taken a massive step back. And to be honest, it's helped a lot. And in terms of posting stories, I still do post every day because to be honest, it brings me joy to share my work and my words.
Mhm.
And I think like stories are kind of my safe space. Like I'll show up on stories when it's important or it's a big life moment or it's a big wildlife moment or something like that, rather than sharing every single second of my day, which is what I used to do. And
Mm.
so it's just kind of this prioritization in my own mind of, all right, Hannah, what are you going to do for yourself today? And then how is that going to better inform the way you show up for your clients and for your community that you've built? And without showing up for myself, how can I show up for anyone else? Like you can't. You absolutely can't. And so for me, it's as simple as like going on walks with my dog or closing screens at a certain time, putting my phone on do not disturb, eating as healthfully as I possibly can every single day. Like little things like that, that just,
Mhm.
it goes such a long way.
What kind of dog do you have?
I have an Alaskan Malamute and he's the cutest thing on the planet.
Oh my goodness.
His name's
I probably knew
Rupert.
that. Rupert?
Yeah,
That's a good name.
he's the
Alaskan
best.
Malamute. Fur
That
everywhere.
that
Oh
passage
my God.
was very, very well said. And then the most important question Aaron comes up with is what
What kind of
health
dog do you have?
I mean,
Uh,
valid. Very valid.
They're important.
yeah, they are important.
That was very well said. And I
Yeah.
agree with a lot of it. We say all the time, apply your own oxygen mask before assisting others. You know, what you hear on the
Yep.
plane, this is fitting. You're a travel photographer partly.
Exactly.
So we've all heard that saying as we've been on planes, but it's true. I'm curious if we can get a little bit more nuanced. It seems like you're somebody who has very good interoception, meaning you're very aware of what's going on inside of your body and brain, which is I think that skill comes naturally to people. And for Others, it takes a lot of conscious effort to work on that, speaking for myself. So I'm curious to know, when you say I felt unhealthy, are you comfortable kind of divulging what that means? Like, how do
Totally.
you know
Yeah.
you're feeling not well?
I was tired and very lethargic and just felt like swollen. Like it was a physical manifestation of what I was doing in my body. Like it was a direct result of not taking the right care of myself and not eating healthfully, drinking enough water, moving my body. And I think in our 20s, we kind of take health for granted. We're like, oh, we're young. We're kind of like in our prime. We're strong, all these things. And you take it for granted. And I totally did that. And when you sit on a plane for 16 hours and you eat the airplane food, you're not drinking the right water, you're doing all of these like negative things to your body, then you get off the plane and you're in a new culture. So you're trying new foods. You're, again, not drinking water, you're not moving your body, all of these certain things. And this was a progression of like a few years that this was going on because I was traveling like 2 to 3 weeks out of the month up until COVID. And then COVID happened and obviously everything changed. And that was kind of when I was like, whoa, okay, let's check in here. And I think there was never this like big moment of like, oh, I don't feel good. It was always this like little subconscious knowing of like, oh, I'm not feeling great. Like all these things are going on. And so yeah, but I definitely think back to just being so tired. And that's like one of the number one things too that is like a side effect of many other health things that end up happening if you stop taking care of your body. And so I think the tired thing scared me, and then just knowing kind of like this feeling of, I don't know, unhealthful
Yeah.
living was lingering above me.
I know what you mean. You lose vigor. And I totally understand what you're saying with that swollen comment. I've been there, whether it's like
Yeah.
overtraining or overworked. You just kind of
Yeah.
feel
Inflamed, right?
1% like
Mhm.
inflamed, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally
It's hard
inflamed.
to put into words. I'm sure
Yeah.
some people know like what we're talking about, but it's a good sign that something's got to change. Not to mention your circadian rhythm was probably just whacked.
Oh my gosh,
Being
yeah.
jet
And
lagged
so many
constantly, your body would have no idea what where it was in the
Up or
daily
down.
cycle.
Not at all. And sleeping in a new bed all the time and
Mhm.
just waking up before the sun to go shoot sunrise and that whole bit, and then like going to bed super late. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, this is an important discussion because we've talked a lot in recent episodes about trade-offs and the what you see sometimes on social media. I'm not saying you're guilty of this, but like the glorification of leaving a job to
Totally.
travel the world, and people think that it's this ticket to a golden life and things are way better, and it's not.
Mhm.
You're making trade-offs, right?
Mhm.
Totally. And I think like too, like I would never recommend somebody follow suit of what I did, like for so many reasons.
Right.
But it's just I did it because it felt right to me, but I've never sat here and preached like quit your 9 to 5, go on the road full time. Like
What do you
I
think of those
saw,
reels? What do you think of those like hype reels when you see them?
I think it's probably affecting people pretty negatively, to be honest. I think that Instagram is such a highlight reel and it makes us think we need to be in a place that we're not. So it makes us think we see this reel, it makes us think, oh, we need to go live in a van. That's going to make me happy. That's going to solve my problems. And I think, again, circling back to those trade off conversations of like, yeah, okay, it looks glorious, but like, what about the other 75% that we're not seeing of like,
Mhm.
what is road life actually like? Or like, what is quitting your 9 to 5 actually look like? And I didn't have health insurance, for example. You know what I mean? And it's like little trade offs like that. Like, you don't have health insurance, you have everything that you're doing, you're responsible for. And I was this like young 20-year-old just like figuring it out. And no, I would never recommend anyone do that. And I don't understand why other people recommend people do that. It's just like let everyone be happy in their own life. Instagram sometimes.
Yeah, and I think too, just looking at your profile, especially as when you agreed to be on the show and like kind of we've been in more contact. So I think the algorithm shows me more of your stuff just because we've been chatting about being on the show. One thing I have noticed is you're very true to your own craft and your own purpose and your own artistic style. There's very little like gimmicky highlight sort of I hope this video works in terms of getting as many views as possible versus I am going to be proud of what I put out and it's artistic and I'm going to make the best seemingly narrative or video that I can. Sure, I got to film vertically. Sure, I got to keep it within a certain time frame. However, it's not I'm not just like bowing to the Instagram gods. I'm going to stick with what I like. And I think that speaks volumes in terms of following your and listening to your own self, listening to your own heart, listening to your own creative sort of juices that you need to get out there. And I'm curious, this one thing about me. I always say this, my questions are 10 minutes into like a rambling story, but you're just
People
going
already get to work by the time you get this question
Yeah.
and they're listening to the
yeah,
podcast in the
they're
car.
done. They're doing the skip ahead 15 seconds. If you know the podcast, you just do 3 skip aheads and you're at the question. It's simple.
Perfect.
My question is, what is the fight, or is there any dissonance between, okay, I have a company I need to work for. I have Instagram. I see what might get, sort of millions of views, let's call it. And
Mhm.
I'm going to stick with what I think is beautiful or attractive or my artistic way. And I'm not going to veer from that. What's the dissonance in terms of that sort of relationship in terms of, in that?
I love visual storytelling, and it always comes back down to that. And it's more so now, like it's just evolved in such a different way of I've played the game. I've played Instagram. I've done the viral reels, the viral audio, and it always just left me feeling like, what the hell is the point? Why am I doing this?
Thank
I'm
you.
just spewing the same thing thousands of other people have spewed onto Instagram, just like everyone else. What about that is special? And I had this like aha moment of what's the point in that? And when I was like, oh, there's actually no point in that other than self serving, growing an audience, and like maybe going viral and having something perform well for a client. But what is that actually doing? How is that moving the needle? Where is that moving the needle towards? And so since this realization, don't get me wrong, like I will use trending audio and I will hop on a trend if it feels right for me. But at the end of the day, it's more so about, okay, what's the point in what I'm sharing? And how is this going to move the needle in either a direction for where I want to go? Is this going to maybe like move the messaging for a critter I care about or a cause I care about? And it's kind of come back to that of like, okay, everyone can just post the same thing, but like, how can I be different and how can I stay true to that? Because that's what lights a fire under my ass, honestly, is like showing up in a different way, in a different capacity than what I see everyone else doing. And it brings me so much joy. That's why I can show up on Instagram and post photos and videos every day when I'm super fired up about something and care about it, or it's a story that I'm super happy about, then it makes me happy. And I think too, the clients I work with are incredible in that they allow the creative space for me to create these storylines around their product. And one in particular, I work with Vera Bradley, which is a bag company. I think probably everyone is probably pretty familiar with them. And I grew up using their bags. And so a recent reel I created for them was visual voicemails. And it was me leaving a voicemail to my mom. And all of the visuals were kind of what I was talking through on the phone. It was a minute long reel. And clients usually want 15 seconds with good audio, punchy, trendy, to the point. They gave me the space to be able to create this, what I think is art, and tells a brand story, tells my story, and just creates this cohesive overall storyline of a trip to Montana and Wyoming. And it's clients like that that I'm so grateful for, because they allow that space. And I hope to see more brands move in that direction of like, we hire you for a reason. We're essentially like mini directors, cinematographers, photographers, editors, sound designers, and we create these pieces. And essentially, it's like that's what they're hiring us for. You're not hiring me for a 15-second viral reel. If you are, like, what's the bottom line on that? So
Yeah, it's almost like we're all becoming songwriters in a sense. You know, like and companies are going to want a unique song. Like they're going to want the new next hit, or at least a comprehensive album that makes sense. There's a narrative, there's a storyline, there's something unique to it. Just something different, I think, to stand apart. I couldn't agree more with the trending stuff. It's fun, and the first person that did the trending thing, you're like, oh, that's smart, or that was funny, or that was a good thing. But then after you see it 1,000 times, you're like, this is not like, this has gotten old. Like, I don't want to be even associated with this, you know?
Right.
There's a few brands out there. I'm not going to name any names, but you see everyone that's like toting it in the same exact way. You're like, they're like, this is the thing that I got a free one to talk about, and there's 3,000 of the same little reels that go over it, and you're like, how do they not want something different? Like, how is this fun at all? So I think it is true that we're hopefully that'll be one side of the whole coin, and then the other side will be like the clients that actually give that space to look for, what unique story do you have? Like what actual life story that someone could relate to do you have that you can show in visuals? I think that will become very important as time goes on.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I just think about like my time in marketing, and these companies spend a lot of money on creators on this space. I forget what the number is, but this industry is worth so much. And what I find interesting is that how is it beneficial to have 5 different people telling the same story? Wouldn't it be more beneficial to have one person tell a very different story? And that's kind of like where I find my sweet spot of, how am I going to do this different than what I'm seeing? And it goes down to even not client work, like even my own stuff of whatever my thoughts are in my head of writing that day, or editing a video and telling some sort of little story about the place that I'm in a different way that maybe hasn't been told before, but maybe has to a certain capacity. And so I think we will start to see a bit of a shift in the space of clients wanting different work. I think the commercial space for sure has evolved in that way of, my commercial clients very much appreciate a different kind of set of images versus the clients you typically work with when you have deliverables for Instagram. They oftentimes do want those viral reels, but I think we all know the downfalls of going viral.
Yeah, for sure.
How are you presenting your ideas pre-production? Yes.
To clients, usually it depends on what the deliverables are, but typically I'll kind of storyboard it in Canva and just kind of pull inspiration images into kind of like make my own mood board type of thing. Whether it's on Pinterest, which is, to be honest, Pinterest and like cinema are 2 really big places that I find a lot of inspiration from. And that is like something I've done over the years to kind of step away from this like Instagram mentality of creating an image for Instagram. No, that's not the point. It's like creating art for yourself. And where do you find the most inspiration? It's not through scrolling on Instagram. And so I pull images from a bunch of different places, or sometimes it's from my own work that I've shot previous that I really liked, and kind of just create this mood board and a loose story idea. And knowing that these story ideas can evolve, can change, can be like weather dependent sometimes. And so it's communicating that with the client and making sure that they're on board. mood and making sure they kind of like understand my creative process. And it's not always super organized, but I try to make it as organized as possible because I find people that work in marketing definitely don't have kind of like the same creative like brain that I have. And so it's bridging that gap of communication almost.
So what percent of your work do you think shows up? Is it for social media? Or is it for different campaigns? Is there a lot of stuff that you don't show because that's not the point? It's not supposed to be on Instagram or through your own personal page. I suppose I wouldn't be necessarily following, would you say Vera Bradley?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any of their bags growing up. So
No, I'm not surprised.
I might not see your storyline. So is there what percent would you say goes through your own personal page that you're, showcasing stuff on there versus stuff that's potentially unseen from someone that follows you?
Yeah. I mean, it depends. Like I truly love photography. So my camera comes with me when I walk my dog in the afternoon. I do a little series called Neighborhood Nature where I photograph kind of local wildlife. And yesterday I actually saw a bobcat. It was the wildest thing.
Sick.
In a tree hunting a squirrel.
Everyone's
Like,
seeing bobcats. Not
who the
me.
hell gets to see a freaking bobcat hunting?
That's amazing.
And so, yeah, who knows if I'll ever post that? Like, I probably will, but I more so work on that type of stuff as a means of like honing kind of like the wildlife craft and just shooting photography of animals and kind of just little small details. But I do try to post a lot of my work that I photograph, and especially a lot of my trips now are more personal. I'd say it's 50-50 with like work trips, and then the other 50% would be personal trips. And I'm really happy with that because coming from a place of 75% work trips, it was always this, okay, you have to post it, the whole thing. And so it's like the editing, the posting, the writing, the caption, all of that. And it's so fast, the turnaround, versus where with my stuff, I like to sit with it. And like there's photos I haven't shared. I haven't even started sharing photos from my trip to India. And those are some of the photos I'm the most proud of because of I play with a lot of slow shutter photography and things like that. And I hope to share them. It's just like kind of crawling out of this dark hole of many other images that I also need to edit and post as well. And I share a lot of stuff through my newsletter and on my portfolio and things like that. But I don't have a specific kind of idea in mind of like how many or like what percentage I would post versus what I don't. I have a pretty strict criteria. I'm very picky with my images, and I think that just comes with like the art form of photography. I think we're all a little neurotic with perfection.
Yeah, we are. Right, Seth?
Recovering perfectionist.
Yeah.
I actually heard on the podcast that you have some images from Churchill that you haven't posted.
You don't even know half the images I have that I haven't posted.
I need to see these photos.
Yeah, it's like I think I've said it on this show a lot. I'm someone who, this may confuse a lot of people. I like filming and I like taking pictures of things. And like that's it. Like I just like doing that. It's fulfilling to me at that stage, full stop. Like I'm not trying to sound pretentious here, but like I don't have the urge, and I wish I did, to be like, I'm so excited to post this. It's like I'm fulfilled at that stage once it's on my memory card and I've edited it in Lightroom.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also torn because I know people are interested in, maybe even people who listen to the show. I have a photography podcast. Maybe I should share more of my photography. Duh, makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's so, the sharing aspect is so much lower on my list of priorities. And sometimes I feel guilty about that. And sometimes I wish things were different. But my priorities, I feel like, are the way they are because I am who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that may change as time goes on. Like, honestly, I'm sitting here listening and looking at your page and thinking like, oh, it's so beautifully curated. She posts once a day because it fills her heart. Like, I'm That's so, I wish I had that, you know? Um, but at the same time, I do have that when the image is done in Lightroom. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
What do you guys think of this? Tear me apart. Let's go.
No,
Again.
I feel like though we're so conditioned to think we have to post that like any sort of value relies in us posting on Instagram. But like if it brings you joy and happiness and you feel complete after documenting this image, then like isn't that the point?
That's what I'm
Like
saying.
yeah, I think that's the point for you. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, I need to go post right away. Like for me, what brings me joy about posting is talking about like the different things that these critters that I'm posting go through, like what their life is like out
Mhm.
living in the wilderness. Like for wolves specifically, like they're my absolute favorite. And like if I could just go photograph wolves and live in the woods for the rest of my life and document them, oh my God, that would bring me the most joy possible. But to
Well,
be
now you're
able
really
to
gonna
have
hate me because I have like 400 on my in my room.
oh my God.
I mean, that's what
Yeah,
happens when you go to remote Manitoba. We're super
truly.
fortunate to do that. But I hear exactly what you're saying,
Yeah.
and you know, I do post my images. I post them on 500px. Anybody who I know that's such a like, there's probably a small portion of people who are very active on there, but it's probably my new favorite platform. And full disclosure, like I've been affiliated and done work with them before. I'm an ambassador for them, but I am because I like it, and I don't have to get sucked into the potential distractions that and the bells and whistles that Instagram offers. I'm very much somebody who I am disciplined at the source. So when I'm at the grocery store, I don't go down the candy aisles. I don't go down that stuff, and it's not in the house. So therefore, I eat healthy. If I don't go on Instagram, I save my time. Once I'm in there, all bets are off. And I know that about myself. So I try to stay as far away from the platform as I can. Does that hurt me at times? Would my career be further if I spent more time pushing my Instagram and my content? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I wonder that sometimes, but I also know myself that there's so many other things on the list to do that I can't jeopardize going down that rabbit hole of memes and reels and the death scroll because I have to get that stuff done. And I'm not saying that people who are able to engage in the platform have their priorities wrong or are wasting their time. Maybe they're just better than I am at managing their level of distraction.
Yeah. Well, I think let's rewind to when I was a kid. People did art to do art, right? They
Mhm.
found peace in it. They'd break out the watercolors and spend 8 hours and share it with absolutely no one.
Yeah.
And there's still people that do that today. I play guitar. I play guitar almost every day. I'm not posting
And no one
songs I'm
hears it.
writing or things that I'm yeah, it's not that what you said about photography is me with music. It
Interesting.
fulfills me at that spot right there. Now you do stuff professionally. Occasionally I'll go play out with my friend and like we get paid and we go out for a couple hours and
Mhm.
we share it at that point. But every single day of it is not a share. I think photography, painting, acting, like whatever it may be, whatever your passion is, your thing is, music, it was something that was done most of the time privately or within a small group, right? And then this idea of being able to share and get accolades, attention for it, which is
Globally.
great. Yeah, globally, which is wonderful. But then there's an overlap between people who truly love the art and are also sharing it versus people are like, what can I share to get some of this attention
Yeah.
and feels? So there is this sort of saturation of it. And I think photography is something that more than maybe I'm thinking out loud and on the fly here, but photography this day and age, you can, if you have money, you can buy yourself a decent camera and pretty quickly can take some decent images. Now, whether you have the eye or the composition or the sort of natural talent that may go along with it or the work ethic, you can get to a point where a lot of people are saying, fire image, great job, this is awesome, follow pretty quickly. it's not that easy with maybe a lot of other art forms. Oil painting, that's going to take a long time for you to master that before you're sharing your work and people are being excited about it. Piano, guitar, years before anyone gives a crap about like what you're playing. Photography is a pretty quick bell curve, I think. You can argue me on it, but I think it's pretty quick to get to a point. You go to a beautiful place, learn how to snap a shot, post it. You're gonna get some people that are like, that's an amazing place. You can pay your way a lot easier than some other things. Now, that does not take away from anyone that has put in tons and tons of time to study the craft and perfect it and work on editing for hours and hours and hours and hours. But I think that whole art form was an easy entryway into a lot of attention from a lot of strangers.
Right. I know for
Right?
me too, I don't know about you two. Maybe there's different moments throughout the creative process that this occurs for you too. But for me, one of the most exciting moments is when you film a sequence or a clip, or you take a photo of something and you look at the back of the camera and you go, oh my God, that's so good. Like, I'm so proud of what I was just able to capture. And it's a tingly moment. So that tingly moment is at that stage for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder where on the creative process, from pressing the shutter to posting on Instagram, where the majority of people, where that moment is the strongest. Is it at the publish or the post moment? Is it at the reply? Even after that, is it the replying to those 50 fire emojis? I know people have gotten way better now. They're actually doing genuine comments, but for the sake of the the argument, we'll make a hyperbole. Like, where along that process do you feel the most giddy?
That's a great
and
question.
The most at home?
You should post that as a question on our site. But I think there is a timeline, right? From maybe it's before the shutter's even done, like getting
Some people
up
might love
for
planning
sunrise.
too.
Yeah, getting up for sunrise and you're going to a spot and you sit in the fog and it's quiet and here emerges a deer and you're like this is my highlight right here. You know, before it even close to taking a picture or looking at it.
Well, what about you two? Are you able to figure out where that moment occurs, or is there multiple of those to different degrees? Let's let our guest go first here.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of this spectrum depending on what you're photographing. It's like, for me, like I said, I shoot a lot of slow shutter photography. And like, if I nail a slow shutter image, like, it makes me so happy that I'm like, okay, that's good enough for me. Like, I might post it, I might not, but for me, it's kind of that flex of like doing something different in photography versus like when it's with wildlife, I'm a lot more intentional with my photography in that I think it comes kind of like even after the publish. So say like, I photographed some wolves in Yellowstone and I shared those images. I mean, I was super jazzed about it. I was super jazzed about the entire experience, was like out of body. Like, a black wolf crossed the road, maybe like 250 yards from me. It was
awesome.
Magic. It was, oh my God, the coolest thing ever.
I'm looking at it right now.
It's just like that moment for me was everything. But then the messaging of that moment and just being able to share that experience with other people, and then having people direct message me and talk to me and like have a conversation about wolves and just kind of like the current climate that they are existing in terms of politics. It's just cool to have those conversations. And for me, that comes back to my purpose. And it's like, I share these images to create more education for people around topics they might not necessarily fully understand. And if my photo can be kind of like a jumping off point for them to kind of explore a little more deeply on their own, then awesome. And it goes the same for photos of India when I'm traveling internationally, just kind of creating these thought-provoking images for them to be curious about something for themselves, to then go either research or go to the place and see for themselves. And so for that wolf example, like I got so excited, 10 times more excited than ever hitting the publish button on those posts, of having conversations with people being like, whoa, tell me more about this experience, or how can I do this? Or like, I didn't know this, and this about wolves, stuff like that. It really like comes back to my purpose. And like, that's what gets me going.
Interesting.
Yeah, amazing. For me, I think there's different things. There just are. If you're doing video, I think in terms of artistic and narrative and storyboarding, putting it together, there's just so many ways a video can go off the rails. I feel like when it all comes together and the scenes work together and you edit it right and the music's right and there's a flow to it and it comes together congruently, that's a very exciting moment, because video is a ton of work. So if you're creating a narrative, like a storyline, and it comes together, sometimes it's like magic. I feel like it's magic to me. And it's just like, wow. I mean, my van trip with my son, like none of that narrative was really there until I put the video together and started this voiceover stuff. And it dove into this thing of I was the one speaking this whole time, and the imagery is him as like a little boy, but it's me. So like this whole narrative, when that came together, was like, oh my, like this is, where did this come from? So there's like this magic there. I think in photography, there's catching the moments, these moments. I just remember one. I've always wanted to see a kestrel. I've seen a few, but they've been far away. Such a beautiful small bird of prey, really hard to get a good photo of. One was flying like right at me when I was at that cabin, and I had my wildlife lens, and I got a couple of photos, and it jumped off its perch and flew right by me again to go back towards the barn. I think it was hunting like little finches, little birds. So it was flying right at me, and my Sony, thank you, Sony, nailed the focus as this bird's flying right at me, and looking at it back on screen. Like I haven't edited that photo or posted it, or published it, I should say, but just like looking at it and editing it, when you're like, oh my, like that's sharp, like that came in, that's unbelievable. Even if it's not the best photo, like composition wise or looks wise, it's just like, oh, that was so cool. And I caught that moment. So I think catching moments is another one of those little peaks for sure.
It's almost like documentary style or photojournalist style, in that sometimes you shoot and you don't necessarily have any sort of like expectation or attachment to whatever happens. You're more so just like documenting this thing happening. And if you get a good photo, amazing. Hopefully your tools work right and your camera pulls focus. But I can relate to that in so many ways, of just kind of like documenting life as it happens. And I think with photography and video, we get so caught up in creating an image or making an image or getting that photo that we forget about all the other smaller moments that sometimes pass us by that we otherwise might not have seen. So it's like paying a little bit more attention to those smaller moments too, or giving room for the unexpected.
And you just reminded me, and I've talked about this before, I think one of the most magic about wildlife photography is you might get this idea, and this has happened, I can't tell you how many times, that there's a bald eagle nest on this lake. Okay, I'm going to kayak out to this thing. I want to see these bald eagles. So in your mind, there's this story that's playing out as I'm going to get a great photo. I hope I get a great photo of bald eagles. And you get out there, and a blue heron flies right at you and lands 10 feet from you and is hunting next to you. None of that storyline was in your head. And then that is what occurs, and that what makes like these unbelievable photos from the day, which you had no idea, no cognition of that even possibly happening. And then this like magical plan B happens all the time, right? Like you go out with a purpose, and then it could be a chipmunk that's right in front of you with like a cute flower in its mouth or a nut in its mouth. And you're like, that's such in perfect lighting. And you're like, I had no thought, no consciousness of this thing happening. I had all the images of a bald eagle happening in my head and how I'm going to capture this thing. And that was fine. But this amazing thing that I wasn't even thinking of happened and I documented it. I think that's another magical point along those lines where it's like this unexpected brilliance.
Also, any chipmunk photo is a good one.
It is.
That is true.
My favorite.
So cute.
They are.
Seth's favorite. That's what made him famous.
It's my first wildlife photo ever.
Yeah.
Really?
Was it my first wildlife photograph ever that I at least was proud enough to share or be psyched on? Was a chipmunk standing on its hind legs, looking around a piece of plywood that was leaned up against like a structure.
That's awesome. Did you share it anywhere?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
It's got to be way down there.
I'm going to go scroll after this.
I'll send you it right now.
Cool.
And it's
if you get a random
I
leg,
printed
that's
it and I
why.
hung it in my bedroom. It's still because it was the photo that got me hooked.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Right. And it's interesting how an experience like that can do that. And forever I've had chipmunks so dear to my heart.
Yeah.
I name them when I see them.
Yeah. My dog has chipmunks near to his heart as well. He loves to hunt them.
Hunt them.
Yeah. That's a tough
We don't
one.
allow that though.
Strong prey drive.
Yeah, very strong prey drive. You had said something that kind of like provoked this other thought in my head, and now I've lost it, but it was along the lines of what you were speaking on, of kind of like allowing this space for other things to happen or allowing for the unexpected. And I wonder if there are those people out there that would. So you gave the example of the blue heron. I wonder if there are people out there that would just be like, no, screw the blue heron. I'm getting this eagle. That is the shot. Or are we all allowing for that space of like the unexpected? Because I feel like for myself, I definitely allow space for that of, and then sometimes those are like the bigger stories or like the more interesting experiences are the ones you don't necessarily expect. So I'd be curious, like what, I guess, other people in the ether that are listening would kind of like how they relate to that in any way.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think so allowing the space, I think also we talked about this last week with video versus photo and making the decision of like, what am I doing today? I struggle with this with cabin photography and trying to capture moments. I'm there for a little bit. There's a sunrise, right? Like, let's just say sunrise. Do I throw the drone up? It's awesome. Should I do video right now? Should I do a photo of this awesome scene? A video of this? Like my brain starts to go haywire, and you have to the opposite of letting things happen. You almost have to be like, I am focusing on video right now. And like this story, I can't do it all. Like I'm going to miss stuff if I try to do it all. So I have to just do this one thing. And maybe that's more along like client work and business work. You have to be maybe more focused and let less in because sometimes it's a little overwhelming. But for wildlife, if I'm sitting there, like I'm taking whatever I can get. And usually I have an idea of what's going to happen. And it's rarely what I'm walking away with. And it's all these like awesome other moments that I just wasn't even thinking about, you know? So maybe it depends. Seth, what do you think?
I don't know. I think you just have to be open to whatever comes your way.
Yeah.
How can you not be? I don't think you can be that narrow-minded. Here I go again, telling people how they
don't think this way.
Don't think this way. How I think is going into any, and beyond just photography, going into any opportunity with what else, like having peripherals. What other direction could this go? Right? I think if you're just in general, if you're too rigid in life, again, speaking from experience, I think you can miss opportunity. Or shut yourself out from good things happening.
Then I think of the Blue Planet where they're in the hide for 3 months trying to get a Siberian tiger. You know, like literally day after day after day after day with that one shot in mind. I'm sure they saw other things, but their goal was focused, right? Like beyond focused to accomplish it.
Yeah, I think about like when you travel too. Like there are definitely those people out there that stick to their itinerary and that's that. I feel like being able to be fluid with what's coming at you in terms of photography or travel or whatever else it is. I feel like that's kind of the sweet spot almost of sharing that all encompassing experience, because without those little unexpected moments, that's what the entire experience is made of, right? So I feel like, I don't know. If you're listening and you're rigid, be more fluid. That's my advice.
And if you're listening and you're too fluid, be more rigid.
Yeah. You got to be a perfect balance of those two things.
Perfect balance.
Be the perfect human.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's ideas, it's perspectives. It's true.
Teasing.
It's Seth and I plan our TPM retreats yearly, and not one has gone exactly like the itinerary. You have lots of options, and you have lots of things, and you have to feel the weather, you have to feel the temperament of people, just the overall temperature, and figure out what we need. I mean, it's very often we're like, dude, we have a 5-mile hike plan, but we're like dying. Like everyone needs a nap instead. I think that's the way it is, you know?
Pivot.
Yeah, pivot. So, listen, it's been awesome chatting with you. We're coming up on an hour. We want to wrap it up with, I think, one thought or question that we like to ask a lot of our guests. And that question is, you started way back when, 2017. If you could go back to your younger self, if you could go back to that first version of yourself, what advice, having lived all this life, what advice would you give yourself back then, starting out, that you feel like would help you out the most as your present person now?
I think for me, it would be focus like truly on what makes you happy, what you like photographing, the stories you like to tell. Don't go down the rabbit hole of what everyone else is telling, like all the stories everyone else is telling. Stick to what you like, what you're passionate about, and follow that. And that will get you to where you want to go a hell of a lot faster than following the same track as everyone else. And I wish I could rewind. If I could rewind time, that'd be amazing. I think I would have spread all the little good critter love a lot sooner, but it took the right amount of time to get me where I am today. And I think without that time from 2017 to now, I just think I'd be a totally different person. And I'm grateful for who I am now, and I'm grateful for who I was then. And yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks
so
so
much. It's not just us people. It's not just us saying be happy with what you're posting and what you're doing. It's our guests too. So get out there. Make sure you love what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just gonna have to retrack and come back to it, because it's gonna be calling in your heart. It's gonna be calling for you. So don't waste time.
Don't waste time. Listen to what you're passionate about. Listen to what gets you out of the bed in the morning.
That's right.
Good stuff. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Till next time.
Bye.